After Britain voted to leave the European Union, a decision that shocked many around the world, speculation began over whether or not Scotland, a region that voted against the referendum and held a vote for independence once before, would try to leave the UK once again. Scotland is far from the only region in Europe where a large section of the population wants to split from the country they are a part of. Regions such as Catalonia, Flanders, and Wallonia have long been vying for independence. That got me thinking, how have these separatist movements affected the seemingly frail European Union, and what could they tell us about its future? Hello and welcome to That Is Interesting. I'm your host Carter. Today, we take a look at a few of Europe's independence movements and their impacts on the continent's unity. Perhaps the separatist movement most explicitly tied to EU membership is the push for independence in Scotland. The British region was a sovereign nation for centuries before its unification with England founded the United Kingdom, and ever since has remained a distinct cultural region. After an unsuccessful independence bid in 2014, it voted overwhelmingly against Brexit. A quick look at a map of how the UK voted makes it quite clear. Not a single district in Scotland voted in favour of leaving the EU, while many areas in the rest of Britain did. Their opposition to the decision has directly resulted in a revival of calls for independence among not just Scottish citizens, but the highest levels of the region's government as well. This clip is from Nicola Sturgeon, Scotland's First Minister, the highest elected official in the region. She is speaking on Sky News, making a pitch for Scottish independence before the UK's 2019 general election.
I want it to happen next year, and the reason for that is simple. I believe it's time for Scotland to determine what kind of future we want and what kind of country we want to be. And in effect, who decides Scotland's future is one of the central questions at this general election. We can leave our future in the hands of Boris Johnson, be taken out of the EU against our will.
There it is, a key argument to why Scotland would be better off on its own. The idea that independence means EU membership. And it was a very effective pitch. Sturgeon's party, the Scottish National Party, or SNP, made major gains in Parliament that election. While at least today the Scottish independence movement is tied closely to the idea of EU membership, its impact on the continent's unity isn't as obvious. While the region's status has been one of the biggest questions regarding what happens after Brexit, and certainly slowed the UK's eventual withdrawal, it would be difficult to spin the dissolution of the UK as contributing to Europe's unity, even if it eventually does result in Scottish membership in the EU. In this case, it seems to be the question of European unity that really breathed life into a separatist movement, not the other way around. However, if Scotland does become independent, the process of joining the EU, which is often long and tedious, could potentially result in its own controversies, creating further divisions among EU members. Turkey, for example, began applying to join in 1987, but their role in the dispute over Cyprus has been a deal-breaker. In an opinion piece in Euronews, Andreas Ramatian asks regarding the SNP, why would a nationalist party advocate EU membership when the EU was founded precisely to overcome nationalism? Certainly, it isn't hard to imagine some EU member states, especially those who have major independence movements within their own borders, getting squeamish about admitting Scotland. It could set a precedent of the EU recognizing breakaway states, and further damage their relationship with the UK. On top of that, Britain would face, as it is now with Ireland, the question of whether or not to implement a hard border between the UK and the EU, where people as of now frequently cross. Long story short, controversies between the European Union and the United Kingdom would certainly not end with Scottish independence, and most likely would lead the two to move further apart. But the potential for the region to become its own country once again is no longer a hypothetical. Polling done by Politico shows that, although there have been a few statistical ties now and then, more Scottish citizens have supported remaining in the UK than leaving for the entirety of the last 5 years. 2020 has changed the situation significantly. Since April, a strong plurality of Scotland has backed independence, likely caused by Britain's official withdrawal from the EU in late January, as well as their highly criticized pandemic response. Besides Scotland, one of the most well-known independence movements in Europe is that of Catalonia. The region, situated on the Mediterranean coast of Spain, just south of the border with France, whose residents speak Catalan, has, as the BBC puts it, a distinct history dating back almost 1,000 years, and before the Spanish Civil War, it enjoyed broad autonomy. Indeed, a 1785 treaty between Britain and Spain refers to the region, saying that the Catalan people should not only enjoy the entire possession of their estates and honors, but should also have their ancient privileges preserved safe and untouched. In 2017, Catalonia's regional government held an independence referendum. The Spanish government sent police throughout the region in an attempt to prevent the vote from taking place, but many still turned out, and the results clearly favored independence. Soon after, the regional government, led by Catalonia's president, similar to a governor in the US, Carles Puigdemont, wrote a declaration of independence and voted in favor of it. Spain then ousted Catalonia's government and arrested many of its leaders, with some, including Puigdemont, escaping to Belgium, the headquarters of the EU. Although a desire for self-determination, not a fear of withdrawal from the EU on the part of Spain, was the major driver for Catalonia's government to declare independence in 2017, the Catalan separatists certainly wished to remain in the European Union nevertheless. The Declaration of Independence that they issued says that Catalonia has the unequivocal willingness to integrate into the international community as quickly as possible. The new state is committed to respecting the international obligations which currently apply in its territory and to continuing its part in the international accords to which the Kingdom of Spain is bound to. The European Union is, of course, perhaps the most relevant of these international accords, and in fact, their Declaration of Independence mentions the EU several times by name, calling on the Union to help them broker an independence deal with Spain. Writing to The Guardian, Rantir Singh Baines says that it is not Brexit but the nature of the EU that is largely responsible for the impending breakup of Spain and the UK. Baines makes the case that Britain and Spain's EU membership has led separatist movements within these countries to intensify, as the idea of independence while belonging to the EU seems a safer alternative than independence on its own. Were Catalonia to become independent, they would likely want to remain within the European Union. EU membership was discussed in their Declaration of Independence, and it's no coincidence that Catalan leaders picked Belgium, the location of the Union's capital, as their destination to flee from Spanish authorities. In fact, just last year, Catalonia's former president, Carles Puigdemont, was elected to a seat in the European Parliament in Brussels. But just as with Scotland, adding an independent Catalonia to the EU would likely be a major controversy among its member states, Spain especially. Just as with Scotland, Catalan separatism has been a source of division among Europeans, and in the EU in particular. Some view it as an illegal rebellion, while others see things differently, such as Alex Orr, writing to The Guardian, who says that for an EU member state in the 21st century to have political prisoners beggars belief. Orr goes on to say that the EU should play the role of peacemaker, offering the parties a way out of the conflict. In Catalonia, hypothetical independence is already forming a rift in the EU, with Puigdemont's move to Belgium damaging the country's relationship with Spain. Belgium, the heart of the European Union, faces its own difficulties with national unity. The country is effectively split in two, with the Dutch-speaking north, called Flanders, and the French-speaking south, Wallonia, each maintaining a distinct national identity. This divide is nothing new. The Miami Herald wrote about it as far back as 1916, quoting from a petition that advocated for greater regional autonomy, saying, "Belgium will be re-established on a dualistic or federal footing, with separate self-government for Flanders and Wallonia, or she will no longer prove capable of life." Indeed, the country remains incredibly divided today. Writing for The Guardian, Ian Traynor says that the country operates on a basis of linguistic apartheid, which infects everything from public libraries to local and regional government, the education system, the political parties, national television, the newspapers, even football teams. The only part of the country that isn't part of either Flanders or Wallonia is Brussels, the capital city. With a large population filled with both French and Dutch-speaking citizens, Brussels is the sole example of a mostly bilingual region in the country, even though it has a larger French than Dutch-speaking population. While many Flemish and Walloons would rather see Belgium split in two, Brussels is, as Traynor puts it, the front line of the language conflict. The fact that the country and city home to the EU's government faces such political instability and nationalism is certainly problematic for the organization, especially one meant to transcend national borders and identity. If divisions between the Flemish and Walloons increase, it wouldn't be hard to imagine the EU being affected. On the other hand, perhaps the location of the European Union's government in the midst of this divide provides an element of stability and unity that wouldn't be present otherwise. The last region I'm going to focus on in this video is one that successfully became independent, and one of the newest countries in Europe. The Balkan nation of Montenegro, once part of Yugoslavia, successfully gained independence from the former country's remnant, Serbia and Montenegro, in 2006. Montenegro, however, has not yet joined the EU. However, the process is almost complete, and it recently became a member of NATO. According to the European Parliament, Montenegro is on a leading path to EU accession. While Montenegro's journey to EU membership as of now looks to be successful, the process has taken over a decade, as member states need to meet certain criteria to become members, including free speech, free press, and a lack of corruption, which can be challenging in young countries undergoing political upheaval. The European Union was also heavily involved in overseeing the country's independence referendum, making sure that it was free and fair. However, this method only works when a country that the region is trying to become independent from supports the independence referendum. The EU would, for example, be far more likely to oversee an independence referendum in Scotland than Catalonia, as the United Kingdom has supported the holding of such referendums while Spain has not. The fact that the country has been relatively stable and peaceful since independence has likely helped their case, as well as their successful admission as a member state of NATO. However, according to the EU Parliament, the question of joining the organization was very controversial within Montenegro. They write that NATO membership has been at the center of heated political debates in the country, which triggered anti-NATO protests. A weak point was the divided public opinion and Russia's attempts to sabotage the process, including through a failed coup in Montenegro during the October 2016 elections. So while their chances at joining the EU look pretty good right now, the division within the country over joining NATO, which ultimately led to a coup attempt, are a stark reminder of how the situation might not be as easy as it seems. While it's unlikely that Montenegro, which isn't such a dominant force in Europe as countries like Britain, Russia, or Germany, will stir up much controversy among EU member states, current fear around the European Union, epitomized by Brexit, could make the case that the EU itself could damage the unity of Montenegro, one of Europe's youngest countries, as opposed to the other way around. The European Union was meant to curb the nationalism that had caused so much violence across the continent, and in many ways was quite successful. But today, the numerous independence movements throughout Europe, of which I've only talked about a few in this video, have and will continue to play a major role in the continent and the organization's unity, perhaps stoking up old rivalries between member states and creating new ones as well. Likewise, the idea of joining a multinational organization like the EU has been a very promising proposition for many regions seeking independence, providing the potential for strong economic growth and membership in a powerful alliance. However, to other regions it has been more controversial, and disputes over whether or not to sacrifice some newfound independence for security and growth could get new countries off to a rough start. Regardless, the fates of independence movements and international organizations are clearly tied together and will continue to impact one another throughout the future. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you learned something new. Subscribe for more content like this. I cover the countries, cities, people, and places of the world and beyond. These videos will leave you saying, that is interesting.